We track every single cent that we spend on our boat refit and cruising, and the largest category by far is something simply called fasteners. When we're spending all this money on little pieces of metal that are critical to hold all kinds of things together, you'd think it would be a good idea to keep them organized. And yes, we definitely work on that one too. Hi, I'm Nico Waters, and welcome to the Boat Galley podcast. Today I'm talking about fastener boxes and how we use these important pieces of gear to keep an awful lot of things organized. First of all, I want to share another incredible Boat Galley resource for you. Sure, you found the podcast. Maybe you've experienced some of our amazing cruising guides or courses or other things. But did you also know that there's another, much like the podcast, completely free resource from the Boat Galley? It's the Boat Galley newsletter. And once a week, into your inbox, you can get a letter from Carolyn that includes a snippet about what life is like, the cruising life is like, what getting ready to live aboard is like, all kinds of incredible information with also links to the latest podcasts, as well as some of her articles from the past. Sign up for the Boat Galley newsletter today. There's a link in the show notes, and don't ever miss one of those incredible weekly pieces of resource just for you. Fasteners. Fasteners are a massive part of life aboard. It's not just that you have screws and bolts or nuts and washers that you need to keep track of, but in all those categories, you have sizes and lengths, head types, screwdriver required types. Each has its own place. And no matter how hard we try to standardize what we're using, you've got a whole lot of many different options that you need, unfortunately. And if you jumble all those fasteners together, trying to find exactly what you need in the ensuing chaos will take you so long you might wind up throwing your hands up and go buy more. And I gotta tell you, when individual fasteners at our local hardware store near the boatyard where we are right now, a size that we use all the time, I think it's a size 10, 1.5 inch long screw, they're 83 cents each at the hardware store. Whereas if you buy a box of them, you might spend $5 for a box of 25. Buying in bulk makes a whole lot more sense, which means, of course, you're going to have extra if you need a dozen for any given project. And if you keep track of the extras, it means that you've got much more of a chance of putting your hands on exactly what you need in short order. Over the years, we've definitely used lots of different kinds of boxes to organize these fasteners. I think probably in the 1990s, we probably started out by keeping individual cardboard boxes of screws or the individual plastic bags or paper sleeves that you find at the hardware store. We would keep these in a flat Tupperware style box and then just riff through them as we needed things. As our collection grew larger and larger, we needed to have something a little bit more sophisticated. I think the first real fastener boxes, in quotation marks, because they certainly weren't, you couldn't buy just fastener boxes when we first started this, or at least we didn't know about them. And I think the first ones that we found came from the fly fishing section of a local hardware store, where people would put the flies that they had built. And they didn't have any way of making the sizes bigger or smaller of the individual compartments. More recently, we found craft supply boxes. So if you go to a place like Michael's or another craft supply store, you can find craft supply boxes, particularly for beading and that sort of thing. And then, of course, now you can actually Google fastener boxes and find boxes that are made specifically for this purpose, to hold fasteners. And here are some things that we've found to be the most useful attributes in a fastener box. There are some that would be ideal that we haven't found yet. So if you've found perhaps a box that has these other characteristics that are also waterproof, that would be probably good to know about, just because then it would keep moisture out. But in general, this is what we have found to be the most useful in terms of looking for a box that you will use for fasteners. We prefer plastic. They're lightweight, durable, And a plastic box has the benefit of not rusting or breaking as a glass or a metal one might. We have some plastic boxes that we use for fasteners that we have had on board Calypso for quite literally decades. A second point of something that we found to be really important is that a box is positively latching. A single latch point isn't enough, as it's way too easy for that one point to get jostled loose as you're grabbing for the box, and then all of those contents get dumped out in one fell swoop. Not really great. So something that has more than one latch point, 2 or 3 or 4, absolutely critical. And the last one, this is a recent gotta have attribute or really important thing, and that is that the compartment sizes are customizable. A lot of the boxes that you can buy for crafts and for fasteners, they have a grid set up with plastic inserts and plastic dividers that you can use to make the individual compartments whatever size you need. So if you need a section for small washers and another one for 3-inch long screws or bolts, no problem. You can actually just use your dividers to make the compartments the exact size that you need for the individual things that you have in there. And this definitely helps maximize usable space within the box. Some of our older boxes don't have this capability, and so we have to put, say, some of the longer bolts or screws into a completely different box instead of being able to keep it all in one type box together. Finding the perfect size box for us has been a little bit more tricky. A bigger box we find harder to store, it's harder to move around, and it actually can get really darn heavy when it's filled up. A smaller size box can be easier to store, but also easier to lose. And yes, on a 28-foot boat, we can still lose boxes that are a reasonable size. I'm talking like 6 inches by 12 inches and like 1.5 inches deep. We've lost a box of panhead screws that we last saw on board when we were doing a project in the BVI last winter. We've taken the entire boat apart, and we still can't find that box, which we know never came off the boat. But a smaller size box also might require multiple boxes to contain your entire hoard. Our current favorite boxes seem to be the Hyper Tough boxes from Walmart. They are a little bit on the larger size, and the interlocking system that they claim on their website is an amazing thing. We haven't found that to be particularly useful, but they do stack pretty nicely and they fit in together. But the price is right on these boxes. The handle makes it easy to grab, and the dividing compartment size options is just fabulous. They have lots and lots of different options with their grid system. It also latches in 4 different ways, so there's just no way that this thing is going to come apart. I think actually that probably is the interlocking system. One of the latch aspects, which is a slider on the sides, is probably supposed to latch the boxes together. What it also does, though, is it makes it so that you really can't have the thing accidentally come open. We create a label for the outside of the box so we can grab the box that we need on the very first go. And with screws, we have a bolt box and we have a couple of screw boxes. But with screws, we found it really helpful to mark the individual compartments in some way. Usually we do this just by cutting off the label from the bulk box and sticking it in with the fasteners. That way we know at a glance what size we're getting, but it also makes it really, really easy to see what fasteners we're getting low on. Having the right size and type of fastener on hand makes projects go much more smoothly. Being able to find the fasteners when you need them, multiply that by 100. I can't wait to share an anchorage with you when we're not looking for fasteners, or maybe we're sharing our fastener boxes, or maybe you've got a fastener that I need, or I have one that you need, and we can each put our fingers on them because we have them organized in a way that makes sense to us. Thank you so much for listening to the Boat Galley podcast. If you found this useful or entertaining or interesting, it would help us out immensely if you would go ahead and leave us a 5-star review, because that does help other people find us. And other ways that people find us are by you just sharing the word. Tell your friends about us. We love having new people be a part of our community. have the most spectacular week.